So good morning, Julie Moore, Secretary of the Agency of Natural Resources, and welcome to the Senate Ag Committee. We've been discussing a bill 434. It's the new ag innovation proposal, and some of your folks are going to get bumped off the panel, and we wanted to make sure that you folks have had input into that new process that's being proposed, and if you're agreeable with that or would like to see any changes. I know we need to all work together and all be in, and we wanted to make sure, that you folks had an opportunity to be heard. So you could give it, I think you've probably been working on this, and you could give us your take on it.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you very much for having me this morning and the opportunity to speak to the bill. I want to start by saying that I both understand and appreciate the intention of establishing the Agricultural Innovation Board and the needs it's designed to address. And I think one of the challenges and one of the pieces I've continued to dialogue with the Ag Agency is the significant expansion in scope beyond the current role of the Pesticides Advisory Council. And really, the history of the Pesticide Advisory Council has been to bring together relevant expertise, largely from within state government, to consider potential environmental harm, human health, and non-target impacts around the use of pesticides. Transitioning to the Agriculture Innovation Board would bring together a much broader suite of issues, including soil health, ecosystem services, and integrated pest management. And I expect as a result, the work would also transition from sort of this deeply technical work and discussion that takes place at the Pesticide Advisory Council to more of a policy level focus. And I think it's important to acknowledge that transition for a couple of reasons. One is the real value I see in the technical work performed by the Pesticide Advisory Council. And then second, and this one is very much to the point you made, Senator Starr, about the change in representation from the agency. The broad scope of work that's envisioned for the board, coupled with the current allowance for just a single representative from ANR, would not allow us necessarily to bring to bear the full breadth of the agency's technical expertise. Staff who are involved in pesticide use are spread across all three departments within the agency, everything from the control of Eurasian water milfoil in our lakes and ponds program to the TFM treatments for lamprey in our Fish and Wildlife Department, to some of the work done through Forest and Parks looking at forest pests, including gypsy tent caterpillars. And these staff are distinct and separate from those who are going to be most knowledgeable about soil health and ecosystem services. So there's a challenge there. This has been sort of the focus of the conversations I've been engaged in over the last several weeks with the Ag Agency, and have encouraged them to look at the model that we use in the Endangered Species Committee, where there is sort of this high-level committee, which is supported by a set of, this case, scientific advisory groups, and in the context of the Endangered Species Committee, they're species specific. So we have a flora advisory group, we have a bird advisory group, we have an invertebrate advisory group. And I'm imagining that there could be a similar structure within the Agricultural Innovation Board that would allow for those more nuanced conversations to take place with recommendations brought back to the board. It's my understanding that both the Ag Agency is open to that sort of arrangement. There's nothing in the statute that specifically precludes it, but I just think it's really important to think not only about the breadth, but also the depth that's needed to engage in some of these conversations. And then the other concern I've flagged for the Ag Agency, and I'm not sure there's ever a perfect time, but there is an awful lot of work going on in the space where the Agricultural Innovation Board would work right now. The Payment for Ecosystem Services Working Group, the Climate Council, which I am intimately engaged in and with, and then the Governor's Commission on the Future of Agriculture. And, see very much that one of the roles for the Agricultural Innovation Board could put in place a structure that supports seeing these recommendations from each of these different efforts moved into action. But I also, have wondered aloud whether it's prudent to allow these efforts to move a bit further down the road in order to inform exactly what would be needed in terms of guidance and engagement by something like the Agricultural Innovation Board. So and maybe in conclusion, I do think this is a good idea. My concerns are that technical depth and just ensuring that we don't lose that in going to something that's broader in focus. And then just how to most effectively integrate it with the ongoing work in these other places, recognizing that there are going to be some fairly significant recommendations coming out of each of those different working groups in fairly short order that might inform and in some ways alter what would be the ideal composition of the Agricultural Innovation Board. It's been a pleasure to work with the Ag Agency. And as I say, I very much appreciate the need that they perceive and are working to address in helping form this proposal.
Yeah. Thanks, Julie. So I can understand, about having these people with specific knowledge in regards to their given areas to come together. Is there language? Is there language? So there is language that we could add to the bill, I would presume, that would, even though it's not stated at this point anywheres, that would set a group or these groups up, scientific groups up, to present to the Innovation Board. Is that basically what they would be doing on specific issues?
Yeah, I think a model very much like that. And I did go back after the last conversation I had with the Ag Agency to look in a little bit more detail at the Endangered Species Committee and whether it's explicit, the scientific advisory groups that were formed, or whether it's been more discretionary. And it's discretionary. They aren't specifically named in statute or in any of the forming documents around the Endangered Species Committee. And I think that flexibility probably has value. And it does allow for, at times, if there's an ad hoc need, to form a team that's able to look at that. But I think a general recognition or expectation stated in the statute that these technical advisory groups would be formed would be welcome.
Yeah. Well, it seemed as though we'd have a better all-around bill if something like that was in there. What are the committee members? What do you have an opinion on that? Anthony and then Brian.
I appreciate what Julie said. I think I've been wondering why my gut reaction to this proposal has been that it's a good idea, et cetera. It's like we've all said, but I really think it needs more input from A&R because of the kinds of issues that we hope it's going to address, and particularly being so broad, as you've mentioned, Julie, but it only meets 4 times a year. I could really envision this thing not doing anything for quite a while because it's just lack of information and coordination and not having the expertise to move forward with so few meetings. So I would definitely be open to either these technical scientific advisory committees or simply putting more people from A&R on the innovation board. Might be easier just to put more people from A&R on the board, but I mean, I'm open to either one, but I just want it to be something that actually works and make my concern all along has been with all of us. I think we know that the pesticide advisory board just wasn't doing its job in a sense. Not saying that it deliberately like didn't avoid doing their job, but it just wasn't really working the way we want it to work. And I'd hate to see this board set itself up for the same kind of inaction that we've experienced with the pesticide advisory board.
Yeah, I guess just my reflection would be, having been working with the 23-member Climate Council for the last 4 months, and very sensitive to the challenges of large boards and being able to move conversations forward at any speed. I think very much to your point, Senator Polina, there is a lot of work to spin a larger board up into that productive space to get past that initial learning and get into some of those deeper conversations. And so frankly, I'm a bit torn, would appreciate the opportunity to see additional A&R representation on the board, and at the same time recognize that even at 15 members as currently proposed, that is a really large board. And am trying to balance sort of the interests and expertise of the agency against the function of that board.
Sure, I hear you.
Yeah, Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so one of the advantages of serving with someone for the 7 years I've been serving on both committees, by the way, the whole time, Senator Polina and I have both been on the exact same committees, morning and afternoon, for the full 7 years of my career, is that he anticipates my questions very well. So he's already asked you the exact question I wanted to ask. I counted 14, but if you say 15, that's okay. But I was going to ask whether you would favor, Julie, just adding 2 or 3 more people to that board. And I understand totally the complexity. It's a huge body of people to try to get input from. So I'm very sympathetic. And then the second point you made, and I thought that had some validity too, is there already is substantial work going on with other groups around. So would it be prudent for us to consider delaying the implementation of this by, and you tell me, a year or however long? We can make the passage date, I guess, whatever we want, so that we don't immediately interject another body into work that's already going on.
Yeah, I can speak to the Climate Council. Obviously, we need to adopt the Climate Action Plan by December 1st of this year. And so, in a year's time, I think we would be in a different position in terms of understanding the role that our agricultural lands are going to play in terms of carbon sequestration, as well as some of the emissions reduction opportunities associated with agriculture. I'm less familiar with the timeline for the work of the Payment for Ecosystem Services Working Group, although know that they just sort of started back up within the last few weeks after a period of hiatus. And I believe the Governor's Commission has about a year to accomplish their work, and they are in the process of naming commissioners, maybe even as we speak.
The 14-member board is next to impossible to get them all together, or get enough of them together often enough so they even feel comfortable working together. I think there's room there for improvement. To move on our part, to move forward, we're going to keep working on this to try to iron some of the bugs out of it. But I want to make sure that you folks at A&R are well represented, but not to the point where the bill gets moved to Natural Resources for 2 years to figure out if we pick the right 2 or the right 3 people to be on there. But I haven't figured out yet if we should have like these two smaller groups that advise the new bigger group, which is gonna get smaller if I have anything to do with it before we get done. But if you had some, I think, Julie, if you had some language to present to us on how we could set A&R up to help with this, it would maybe give us, it would certainly give us some help in reviewing the overall structure of the innovation group. But with all the work that you folks do with water quality and with the lakes and Michael in the forest industry and all that, you certainly, if you folks have the time, should certainly have either a seat at the big table or at least advising the people at the table where you stand and why, and understand the scientific part of what the heck they're trying to do. I don't know if that's something that you could do to help us with or not.
I'd be happy to go back to the team, Senator Starr at A&R, and put our heads together and see if we can propose an alternate structure, or at least a little bit more detail on this structure that would address those concerns. I would offer that the Climate Council ended up forming a 6-member steering committee, just in recognition of the fact that we were having a very difficult time making the kind of forward progress we needed to make with the 23-member council. And that size is much better, and wonder if there isn't an alternative model where there's a board that's effectively a steering committee that is smaller, to the point you made, supported by some of these advisory groups.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I've served on some boards that were way out of whack. There was too many of us sitting at the table to ever come to a conclusion. And no, but you've got to have, if you're going to have a smaller crew, you've got to have people that are interested, that have, got some skin in the game, as I call it, or say it, about what comes out of there. And I think, I don't know if the committee, we haven't taken any sort of, we haven't checked which way the wind's blowing, or I haven't yet, because we're just getting going. But personally, I think 14 is too many people. And I wondered about the 14, if, with you folks missing somebody from forestry and somebody from fish and wildlife, and that I thought that was a little out of sync as well. So if you could put something together, some recommends from you folks, it would certainly, I think, help us make up our minds.
Sure, I would be happy to do that. And we'll endeavor to get that back to you by the end of this week.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to work, I think, on next week, when maybe Tuesday, but for sure Wednesday morning.
Okay, well, then is it all right if I take through Monday? Then that would give me a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, take what time you need, and it's important that we get it right. And I think Anthony, I think he mentioned the timeline or somebody did, about should it wait a while or should it get up and going right away, like in January of 22? It would be good to get your opinion in regards to that as well.
Yeah, no, I do. What I should do is pull the relevant dates for the other, both the Payment for Ecosystem Services Working Group and the Governor's Commission, and just see how they line up with what I know to be the dates for around the Climate Council's work, and can include that in the reply I send.
Yeah. Other questions for Julie? No? Nothing, Chris, you're all set? Yeah, how, Julie, different note, how are they doing down to Addison Field Days? Do you know? Have you heard
I
anything?
don't know. I'm gonna hope that that's well resolved, since I haven't heard from anyone that it's not. But
I hope it's resolved. The only thing I've heard from one person down there is that they thought it was a little overwhelming to put a second storage tank in when they had their tanks pumped every day, and was wondering why they couldn't be on a schedule to pump the big tank at the Welcome Center every day, rather than putting a second tank in just in case they didn't pump it every day. But
Yeah.
Anyways, any other questions on 434 for Julie? If not, thanks a lot for your time this morning, and we look forward to hearing back from you by next week, Tuesday.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me in. And I know you, I think, had to move some things around to accommodate my schedule, and appreciate that as well.
Yeah, no problem. So thanks again, and we'll wait to hear from you.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Be well.
Julie.
Chris? No, all set.
Maybe.
So I guess that kind of wraps us up, Linda, so you could take us offline, and we got to be on the floor for 1, I believe, today.